Good morning. I'm going to call this hearing of the Board of Revision to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and it's the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. With me is Marley Billyhurst right to my left, and farthest to my left is Brent McIntyre. My name is Harvey Diamond. The city is represented by the assessor Paul Tukey, and our secretary is Kathleen Sutherland. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. Matters for which revision have been requested. The requests are described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. All statements made by applicants or assessors must be sworn in, and everybody speaking must be sworn in on the Bible or affirm that they will tell the truth. Hereby, the comparison of assessments are not considered as evidence by our board. Our board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. We make our decisions on the basis of the evidence that we hear, and we issue written orders that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that our decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Municipal Assessment Board of the Province of Manitoba if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or if the court please mention the matter pertains to an application for exemption or taxation. Should a party wish to appeal, information on the do so will be contained with our order. With respect to the hearing process, I will refer the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions, and the applicant may then provide their testimony followed by questions. Each side will be given an opportunity to separate if they wish to do so. Once all the evidence on application is brought forward, that party may leave. The process will repeat for each matter on the docket today, and we will close our hearing after all the hearings are heard and make our decisions after deliberation in private. We'll mail our orders personally as soon as possible. All information is being recorded and forms part of our public record. Thank you, and we can swear in the parties. Thank you.
Paul Took.
I swear that the evidence you're about to present is good morning.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
State your name.
Roger Nico.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first matter that we will be hearing is today's the 2025 Gordon Avenue. And Mr. Tukey, you can proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to, at the outset, say that starting this year, the City of Winnipeg is not accepting management fees in our income approach, so any information that I'm giving is exclusive to management fees.
Okay.
So just 2025 Gordon Avenue for 2020, we have an assessment of $26,694,000. The leases of the subject property on page 2 and 3. I have comparables on page 4 and 5 and 6, and I have another page 4 in there. My apologies. In any case, we have a number of income streams on this property. We have 3 of them, I believe. First one generates a value of $25,734,000. That's the shopping center. Vehicle car wash is at $265,000. Kiosk is at $695,000. I would like to, at this point, just draw the attention of the panel to a comparison of the NOI. I have an NOI total of $1,910,828. That's in the 2020 roll. It appears that the 2017 mailer has a total NOI of $1,611,637. That number is on the appellant's brief. I would suggest to the panel that our assessment is too high based on just an examination of the NOI. This is my information. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Newveld?
Wow. This will obviously refer to other reports in the day, but when you say the city's no longer dealing with management fees, can you clarify, like, it's my understanding that it's been named management fees, but it's more of a catch-all phrase for a variety of different expenses?
I can say that from my experience, that management fees responds to only that, management fees. When I look at mailers to try and figure out the information that has come in, the only information that I put in management fees is that information claimed as management fees.
Oh, I see. So that's the narrow approach on it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. No questions?
Mr. McIntyre, any questions to the assessor?
I have no questions.
Ms. Billington, any
No
questions?
questions.
Okay, you indicated you thought that maybe the assessment's too high. Do you
Yes.
have any idea of how high you think it might be?
Well, I identified that the NOI is high. I can tell you how much it's high by
Okay.
if you wish to wait for a moment.
Okay.
Our NOI from the assessment versus the mailer is high by $299,191. We've used, you can see the cap rates that we've used.
Yes?
So,
Okay, we can figure that out from there.
thank you, sir.
If, would that propose a recommendation, though?
No, sir.
No. Okay, let's leave it there. Mr. Newveld?
Yes, the actual NOI on page 5, 1,611,636. That's the same number we used on our page 1. There was a small change in it because we, honest with you, we worked backwards, so the number is off by $53. Other than that, the cap rate, and my reason for having a higher cap rate than the assessor, I think typically in a mall like this, I find that cap rate is reasonable, within range. Would probably like say 7.5 rather than 7.25, but in this case, the property's been subject to some risks of its own doing. There's a condominium next door, and the grading of their land has been caused flooding into the condominium underground parking. So in the last 5 years, they've spent a few $100,000 on some grading changes on it. They haven't had a recent issue. However, I haven't been to the site since our last major rainfall last week to see if it's working. So I think a prudent purchaser would, of course, look over the history of this. And this was filed at Court of Queen's Bench, so it was a legal claim that was filed and resolved with some repairs and compensation. In that case, and it was, by the way, this was all provided to the board in the past as well. And when we first prepared this, our discussions with the ownership was that they believe it has been looked after, but again, with the recent heavy rains, which were incredible, we haven't got a report out of them yet. So I think that's a detriment in the market. And one last thing to point out, on this management expense issue, I'm aware that Mr. Tuke wasn't involved with the previous debates on this that go back 20 years. On my page 5, This property actually formed part of our study, which I'm just gonna hand out now. And it's.
It's your study, not necessarily evidence for this particular
Rebuttal.
matter.
Yeah, no, but it'll be rebuttal for everything today, and
That's fine.
I wanted to show the board an actual example, so that you can see where we're coming from on this. As rebuttal, as many of you have heard by now, several people working in the tax business, Colliers, Altus, Stevenson, I believe Mr. Newman, have made presentations to the board. Now, it's not, the 5% that was applied in the past is called management, but it's not management. Every single board decision was clear on it, that there was a and I say municipal board, that there was a catch-all expense category for non-recoverables. So in our study, we went through and all of our Colliers managed property, which this happens to be one, and looked at the history of it. Now, this property, I can tell you for the record, was twice included in our study, and that's on page 2. And I didn't include the current statement in the study, because at the time we prepared it, we hadn't had it, didn't have it yet. But on page 2, the 4th and 5th entries are this subject property from the 2 previous years. And you can see, and now what would have gone into it is what we are showing on page 5 of my brief under non-operating expense. And these are a variety of vacancy expenses that they can't recover from tenants, and administration fees, bad debt fees, owner's repair and maintenance that they can't, by lease, they can't recover from the tenant. There's certain things you have to repair that are not, you can't put on your recovery list, and then leasing commissions. And these form part of the non-recoverable. So in this case, it was $73,000, and on this particular year, and off the potential rent of $1,905. So I don't have it didn't have it calculated, but that works up to 3.83% for this year for the non-recoverables. And in the previous years, you'll noted that 4.57% and 7.56% were non-recoverables. That does not include the repair of the damage, because that was a capital expense and it was not on the operating statement. In addition, on this property, this is owned by Investors Group, and Investors Group have a full-time office, an asset manager, in addition to a property manager, and their approximate costs are 2.7%. So to any investor who's going to be buying this property, they would have to know that they're paying 7.27% non-recoverables the one year, 10.26% the following year, and for the 2017 year, it's approximately 6.5%. So this supports the 5% claim that has been made in the past, that they're always non-recoverables, and you can see the statement to see what they're comprised of. This is a very sophisticated organization as well, so the books aren't, there's nothing questionable in the books. This has been prepared for the shareholders, so they see these as well. So a person purchasing shares in this would see these non-recoverables. And in our valuation, selecting the NOI 1611, we follow the statement, so the exact statement and all of these, which is presented to the ownership of the party to pay them their dividends, or to sell shares, or sell the property, or if they were to buy the property, they would commission a statement similar to this. So this is what the real world sees, 1611. The 8%, and as I mentioned, the normally, we would consider a lower cap except for the problems with the drainage. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Any questions, Mr. Tick?
Yes, sir, thank you. The flooding to the north, that's on the neighboring property, and they've attempted to fix it now.
Right,
Okay.
but it's flooding from the subject, and
Yeah.
you're aware there's a lot grading bylaw that means that you can't drain your water in somebody else's
You betcha,
property.
you betcha.
Or into their underground parking.
Yeah. Okay. You had mentioned the investors group, which is basically a business that looks after realty, right?
Well, I guess they raise money in the markets and pay people dividends, and part of their holdings are real estate.
Okay, so the admin fees, which pays for the people to look after the realty, is part of business value for investors group and has nothing to do with the realty on this property?
No, it's the investment value. This is a good case study of those sorts of costs, because it's, all of these costs get declared, so we can see what they are. So in the prospectus, they would list them in the prospectus as being a cost. And it's not a business cost, remember, they're selling investment in real estate, which is the same as a cap rate. Anytime you buy, if you were to go and buy any property, you're gonna see the books, and you're gonna see these costs declared. And some get declared, some, in amateurish sort of statements, they don't get declared, you don't see them. These people are transparent. In the small corporation, what they don't declare is they sometimes say, well, I'm doing that myself, so I don't need to, but what's your time worth? In this case, they have a staff. There are 4 managers here in the city, each with a different province in Canada, and the administrative assistants, and they're based in Winnipeg, and they handle just the real estate within investors. Now, outside of the real estate end, then there are the investment counselors, the investment brokers. Their fees don't go into this at all. This is purely to do with running it.
Okay. So an investor looking at a prospectus would be able to take advantage of Canada Revenue Agency rules, rules on depreciation, rules on investment, amortization.
Yeah.
None of which is included in realty. And I'm suggesting to you that administrative fees may not be part of a typical investment when it's part of a real estate trust or business that is attempting to raise money for their investors. Those costs are not allowed here at this hearing. Like we don't.
No, actually, that's entirely incorrect. With all due respect, if you look at the statement, there's no amortization in here.
Okay.
There is no depreciation in here. There's nothing of that sort. There's no interest in here.
I'm sorry, I may have misspoken.
Okay.
I didn't mean to say that those costs were included in their report. However, what I am trying to get to is that administrative fees are a business, part of the business, not part of the realty. Management fee recovery, do you note here that management fee recovery has been recovered from the tenants?
The management allowance from the case history, going back 20 years, is not for property management. It is for non-recoverables. It's a catch-all phrase.
Mr. Neufeld, though, I think there was a specific question asked if it was recovered in this instance, and you're not really answering, you sort of are going around it. Is it recovered or not?
Well, his question pertains to the management fee, so it's not on the topic that we were discussing. He's changed the topic.
The question still is a direct question, and I think it could have a direct answer.
No, it's not recovered. Page 5 shows management fees of $95,000. Page 3 shows a recovery of $30,000.
Are you aware that the difference in those management fee recoveries are due to, I believe it's a Safeway? Is that a Safeway? Bear with. Sobeys. Sobeys is the only tenant here which pays some management. They pay $30,000 a year. Sorry, I misspoke that.
Well, just say, what are you referring to first?
Well, what I'm referring to is
Do you
the
have
difference.
is it in your evidence?
It's in your evidence.
Okay, just let me, where you got that, what page?
You had mentioned page 3 and 5.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
guess- I
those
guess
are
the
those-
mailer.
Right, those are
I'm
the
sorry.
gross amounts. Now, you're talking about Sobeys in particular.
Yeah, I guess you didn't include.
Now, you have a rent roll here. Is this what you're talking about?
Well, bear with. When I look at the first page of my evidence here, of the mailer, breaking down the different properties
Right.
and what they pay, I note that Sobeys pays management, like they pay management to, they pay a management fee
That's
of
correct.
$30,906.
Right.
Which is pretty close to management fee recovery, right?
Right.
Okay. When you've looked at acceptable costs that can come out of the income stream here, could you go through these with me here on your page 3? And just say which ones are included
Sorry, page 3,
on your brief?
and which line items?
Which fees should be taken away from the net income, from the gross income?
I'm not really sure what you mean, but I think, I don't have any exclusions here for any of these items.
Well, I'm sorry, I see something here called amortization, amort deferred HVAC
Which page is
on
that?
your page 4.
Page 4.
Is that included as part of the costs here? This would be line 525080.
That is a cost that is recovered because it's in the recoverables. So it's not, like you see, in the operating costs, they've split recoverables versus non-recoverables. So if it's in here, that means they're recovering from their tenants.
For what year?
Well, I guess basically what, if I recall the situation, is that they did some cosmetics on the facades, and then after they did it, they recovered from their tenants.
Like, I guess what I'm trying to say here is line 5250 and 535080 and 535090. These are amortized costs. I mean, we don't accept amortized costs as part of the realty. It's whatever is done in the year, like.
Okay, so then take the spreadsheet, take those out, and then take the recovery out of the rent. There's two sides to the spreadsheet. There's a debit and a credit. If it's on this side, which is the operating expense, then it's recoverable, and then it's not what we're talking about. Then they're getting money from their tenants for it.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at a bunch of costs that aren't allowed here, and I just
Well, you
wanted
say,
you to comment on
you're
that,
saying
that's all.
costs that aren't allowed. Any
Well,
cost is.
Amortized costs aren't permitted.
For
I've
who?
never been.
For who, though?
I gave evidence that management fees are management fees.
Just a second, amortized costs aren't.
Excuse me, but I
By who?
think the question being asked you right now.
No, but he made a statement.
I know, but you,
So I'd like the question clarified.
well, you had an opportunity of questioning before. Right now, you're being asked questions.
No, he introduced a statement with his question. This is brand new.
You can disagree with it.
I'm not I need to know what he's talking about first before I disagree. He said they're not allowed, and I just wanted to know by who.
I'm sorry,
Okay, yes, sir.
I'm operating within the legislation and cases which have gone to define the legislation. And my understanding is that amortized costs are not permitted. Do you feel that they should be permitted in a realty hearing?
If the amortized cost in this particular instance is not allowed, then you have to make a subsequent adjustment from the revenue side, because regardless of anyone's policy, this site is recovering those costs. They may deal with their tenants. We will pay upfront for it. I want X amount of dollars per year, you're paying for it in your rent. And that's why they're there. They split up their costs between recoverable costs and non-recoverable costs. To be very clear, all the recoverable costs are therefore, it doesn't matter, like for our purposes today, for assessment, if you want to disallow amortization, then you have to reduce the net income. So at the end of the day, you're still going to come to 1,611,000 as NOI, because that's the nature of this statement, and it's transparent and scrutinized by by all the securities commissions in the world that have handled investments that are traded in the market. So this is not a Mickey Mouse issue. This is very clear: non-recoverables versus recoverables. This is the best statement you're going to see, or generally from REITs and trusts, are the best statements you're going to see that delineate this issue.
Okay, just for clarification, okay, you're talking about an NOI of 1,611,583,
Right.
and didn't you indicate that you thought that the NOI that the city had was about $300,000 too high?
Roughly, yes.
So I think we're pretty well at the same level then.
I think we're arguing about the future cases.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, so it seems to me that if we're gonna use that as an NOI, and then it becomes a cap rate situation at this point, and that's something that we'll deal with.
Okay,
Thank you.
we're done.
Okay?
Yes, sorry, question.
Yes.
For you, questions?
If you turn to page 5, under non-operating expenses, the first 3 categories are attributed to vacancies. Now, if you turn to the assessor's brief on page 11, is that not what shortfall for?
I don't, specifically, I think you're correct. No, I'm sorry, unspecifically, I think you're correct. Specifically, I haven't looked into it if this was a common area expense or not, but yes, I think that it's categorization here, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Chris? I don't either. Okay, we'll next deal with 400 North Town Road. And when you're ready, Mr. Tip, can you
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Property in question is 400 North Town Road, owned by IG Investment Management, another realty and investment trust type deal. Mr. Chairman, the management fees in this case were all charged to the tenant except for Save On Foods. We have a value of $22,521,000. The leases which we have here on page 2 are the leases that are in place. They're all very current. The sales are of interests of land and land, so I don't feel that they're applicable to the value here. I have other comparison rents here as well. We've used a 6.45 cap rate, value of $22,521,000. I would like to stipulate again that management is management. That's the way I've been trained. That's the numbers that I look at every time. So whatever kind of nebulous management story that I'm hearing might be based on lack of information. Thank you. That's my information.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Neufeld?
Certainly. I have a different income statement than you have. And I'm just wondering if you also have the income statement that was submitted online.
I did view the one that was online, and I did note that the information for the one online in one case was different than what I had. A very insignificant difference. It was a leasable area versus actual area kind of thing. It worked out to just a couple square feet. I think it was the Ultra Cuts. We have the area leased at 1,000, area rentable at 1023, and as far as I could tell, that was the only difference.
I'm looking at your page, your last page, the rental, 76,410, or sorry, 107,878, and they have 64,858 on their submission.
Okay, which page of mine are you looking at?
Your last page?
We're talking about the item that's entitled master rent roll, is that?
Yes, it's the last page, it's a master rent roll, and the total rental area on the master rent roll is 107,878.
Was that a question?
Yeah, it was. Did you, the question was, you're at 107,000 on this submission, and here you have 67,000. And my statement is 64,000.
Where's the 67?
Your first page, leasable area, 67,051.
Sneefel, you're referring to what, page one of the master rent roll?
Page one says 67,051 leasable area. The master rent roll and the accompanying statement refer to 107,878 on the rent roll. I'm just wondering if you'd looked at that.
No, I never noticed it, never noticed that before. Thank you.
Okay. Well, why I'm asking that is your statement that you included is based on the 107,000, and I'm wondering if perhaps there was more than one tax roll on this. On your statement. I'm just trying to clarify.
Sure, sure. Bear with me, I'm just gonna add up what I've got here. So the mailers for multiple properties?
Well, the mailer you presented,
Or the mailer that was sent in?
no, the mailer that was,
Oh, guess what? I've got one too.
no, but here, this is the printed from, the submission, online, which is on my page 2.
Yeah, and I've got one here as well, which appears to be filled out for the actual year. With the master roll, signed by Crispin Mazengui. So, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, at this point, is this called me asking for reversal of onus because of confusing information?
Well, no, because the confusing information is on your part.
No, confusing information is on your part.
Page 1.
Well, I guess what I was referring to is the mailer. Like, what is the area then?
Okay, your page 1 has a minor discrepancy with our square footage for the mailer that I have. But your last page is a major discrepancy. You see that? And so I guess I'm wondering if a couple of things could have happened here is perhaps the wrong statement was attached. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, that could be. I mean, my income here shows 67,051 square feet.
Right.
I can only bring in the information that we're given. I mean,
No, but your support information on the actual mailer is 107,000. So I'm wondering if this did not include the,
I see that it's included at Tim Hortons, which is not part of this property.
right.
Right. So then, like, I'm sorry, I have instructions, and from my perspective, this is called confusing or misleading information. Like,
No, but it's your information, not
but
mine.
this isn't, this was presented to us
Okay.
by your client.
No.
So I'm
this-
sorry if I'm presenting
This was
incorrect information
But this
from your
was
client.
filed.
Mr. Neufeld, what was
This-
filed was the material that is here. It was a copy of the mailer.
No,
No?
no. We haven't gone into my evidence yet. That's not what was submitted.
This is what I've got, and this is what
Okay,
I've submitted
but-
from your client.
But, okay, regardless of who's right or who's wrong or what the mistake was, you are able to confirm, for example, that the Tim Hortons is not in the subject tax roll.
That is correct, and
Okay.
according to my instructions, if we're getting multiple information from multiple properties on one mailer, that's considered a non-entry mailer,
Well,
where I'm supposed to ask for
I think it's
reversal of onus.
I think it's too
Like,
late for that at this point.
No, no.
You should ask.
No.
You know what?
No.
This came out
Just a
of
second.
our
I'm
information.
gonna ask, can the board look at the Municipal Assessment Act on that topic, please? You have copies of the act on information?
We do. And if we're gonna do that, I think that we also would probably want to discuss it with ourselves a bit.
No, of course, of course.
Are you referring to a certain section? Mr.
Yeah,
Neufeld?
yes,
What section are you referring to?
pardon me?
16-1, right?
Is that, okay. The act says that if information being presented at the board differs from information that has been submitted, that the board can reverse the burden of proof.
Right.
Yes. No, I mean, you haven't submitted yours.
No, and we're not up to my submission yet, so we will, so you can't ask for it until I submit, right?
Okay.
That's what I'm getting at.
Well,
Mr. Chairman,
Actually, I think that it's what your principal, your client submits. It's the mailer. If the mailer is confusing, then it can be considered not mailer.
we
We
have
No,
one
but that
mailed
hasn't,
in.
but no assertion has been
withdrawn.
made that it's incorrect, other than when I'm pointing out questions today. So you don't know that this is what was submitted yet. You
Well-
can't make that decision
Well, we're
yet.
assuming the city wouldn't have it if it wasn't submitted. They wouldn't have it to provide it as part of their brief, if it wasn't given to them.
That's not the way the law works,
If I
and you
brought
gotta
in
wait till
two-
you see mine.
If I brought in 2 mailers, how am I supposed to decide which one's the real one?
My issue with this is less which mailer's right, which mailer's wrong. I just want the board to understand, perhaps you can agree with me on this, and then we move on, that the statement that you submitted is more than likely a multi-role statement.
It would appear that way.
Okay, and then let's worry about the other issue after I present. Is that
Okay.
fair?
Well, I think for clarification, because we have to make a ruling on
Right.
this. And I would like clarification from the parties of exactly if there is too much property included in the city's submission, what we should be tracking.
No, they've not.
They haven't.
No, the assessment deals with
Okay.
the actual properties. All I was
So
getting
we're talking
at,
about that.
the statement.
But, I mean, but if it doesn't take us anywhere else, who cares?
Well, maybe.
No, I'm serious.
Yeah, well, okay.
All you do is try to confuse us, and I don't like that.
Sometimes it's really easy.
It is sometimes, I agree.
All I'm saying is that from this page forward, it appears, and I think the assessor's going to agree with me here, that this statement
Okay,
is.
that may very well be,
multiple.
but if it does not alter the workup of the
No,
city,
no, not at all.
then actually, I don't know if I really care.
Oh, yes, but I'm asking the questions here and I care, because for me, it's important.
Well, you asked the questions, and I let you ask them, and you answered
Well,
against it.
just clarifying what you want, what you need. I get the right to ask questions.
You have the right to ask
I noticed
questions.
that a part of his evidence doesn't
Okay.
represent the property.
And from my perspective, all we care about
And it's been
really
agreed
is
on.
how it affects the assessment.
Right.
Now, if it doesn't affect the assessment that the city's worked up, then it's superfluous, so we don't need it.
It's his evidence.
Absolutely, but it's evidence that maybe we don't really require. We wanna find out,
What-
our mandate is to determine whether the assessment's fair, correct.
What if the assessor had the opportunity to review the actual statement? Would his opinion still be the same? And that's gonna be my next question.
Go ahead and ask that.
Okay. I thought we were gonna get out of here fine. I think Paul and I we don't usually argue, do we?
Not normally, no.
No, okay. Well, we're having an off day and it's fun. Had you been presented a different statement this, and you've noted that it's 107,000 feet. If you had seen a statement that only represented the assessable amount of 67,000 feet, would you have reviewed your opinion of value, perhaps, as you did in the previous property?
Well, my perspective.
I mean, just for your preparation
Yeah,
for today.
And just in reference to value, I found my statement and your statement, which has not yet been entered into evidence, to be substantially the same with the exception of the extra properties.
Okay. So, right, and so, but the number at the end isn't the same.
Which,
Well, like your statement, the one you've submitted,
yeah, where it says 67.
has an
instead.
NOI of 1.4 million, and the one I've submitted has an NOI of 1.19 million.
Well,
So, and I haven't entered in evidence yet, but hypothetically, if you had seen a different number, and I'm not saying you're gonna change your opinion of value one way or another,
Sure.
but I'm safe to assume that you would have reviewed this?
What I did as well was I took the areas and multiplied them by the rents on my mailer to come up to the 1,424,829.
Yes, I just happened to note that on your page 5, it is fairly consistent with the statement that you provided, that you have an NOI of 1,452,000, and the statement is 1,424,000. But that includes, then if you compared your premises to the premises on the mailer, there are more premises in the statement than there are in the mailer, correct?
In this one, yes, sir.
Okay.
No, I haven't added for any of those that aren't assessed.
I'm just looking at that bottom line number. It's coincidentally very close to a double, a statement that has more than just the subject in it. That's all I was getting at.
I don't understand.
Well-
Again, could you be patient
Okay.
and explain it to me one more time?
And the explanation as well, so please.
Your page 5 has 67,051 square feet, and your NOI comes out to 1,452,000. Those statements are correct?
I believe them to be.
Okay. Now, the attached statements have an NOI of 1,424,000, and that's about the fifth page from the end, on square footage of 107,878. So my question is, the statement numbers on the NOI are similar, but the area that they've included is not similar. Is that a fair statement?
Substantially, if I could give my own spin on that. Basically, there's an error, I shouldn't say error, there's a different number for the total square footage on this mailer as opposed to what we're assessing.
Yeah, and the statement represents
So-
a higher square footage.
A higher square footage. Now, when I.
That's all I was looking for. If you agree with
Okay,
that,
yeah,
then
I
let's
agree with
move
that.
on.
Yes, sir.
And is that adequate? Does the board understand?
Well, if we don't, we'll ask further questions. We haven't asked our questions yet,
Okay.
and we have the ability to do so, and we do want to understand. So if we require any further explanation, we're capable of getting to it, because we want to provide a fair assessment when it's all finished.
Thank you. I'm finished with my questions.
Okay. Mr. McIntyre, any questions to the
I have no
assessor?
questions.
Mrs. Billinghurst?
Well, I don't know if I'd be correcting this question too.
Why is he, he's up in the passing of the report?
I guess it would be to you, Mr. Tuck, but you may not know. So then this master rental that was attached, is this for an incorrect property, or are there just additional things added to the, or are there just incorrect things added to the correct property?
I believe, like, bear with me, let me just, I have a map here which might potentially assist. Now, if you look at this map up here, this would be my first map.
Which page is that?
What page is that on?
Page 9.
Thank you.
I got page 10, but I'm sorry if the numbers are all over the place.
Okay.
This top one
Oh,
here.
wait, no, that's not 10 on mine. Okay, that's 9 on mine.
Oh,
So 9 on mine as
yeah,
well.
there we go.
Okay.
So 400 Northtown is this property.
Okay,
350 Northtown is this property, of which we have some properties accounted for on this mailer. So this is one property, one roll number. This is one property, one roll number. The mailer that I've submitted has all the properties on this, and I think 2 that are included on this.
like the Tim Hortons?
The Tim Hortons, plus I think there's a
The medical.
Bridgewater. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So I mean,
so it's kind of,
it
So-
caused me a bit of consternation when I first got it, because I'm like, Tim Hortons, where are we gonna put it on this site, you know?
Okay, so, has that affected the square footage that you're?
No, sir.
Okay, and then why not? Because you didn't, so you didn't add those into the square footage that was rentable?
No, sir. Those are assessed at another roll number.
Okay. So what I'm asking you then is, your page 6, your value summary, does that include, in your NOI, does that include any income from the other property?
No, sir. No, sir.
So,
There's no place for me to,
okay, so why is this an issue here?
well, Mr. Chairman, I don't know. What it comes down to is me having instructions to ask for an application of 16-1, if there's inconsistent information. I've been told that a mailer is for one property, and if it's for two properties,
Okay,
if
but-
we can separate those information, that's great, but we can't separate the expenses on them.
No, it's not- it appears that you did that, though.
The expenses?
Well, no, I'm not sure what the expenses, so you. I'm trying to, okay,
No,
I'm
that's
not
okay.
understanding
Yeah.
something here, I mean, I think I can get, the
the-
two of you have managed to confuse me.
My apologies.
No, that's okay.
I'm comfortable that the 67,051 square feet does not include any of the value that has been
Okay,
assessed at another area.
okay, and what you did was you took the value, the square footage at each location, you multiplied it by the square footage cost,
Yes, sir.
and that was your number that you used for potential rent. And so basically then, if that's the case, as far as you're concerned, your workout up on page 6 of your report should be accurate,
Should be.
regardless,
Should be.
if that's what you did.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Neufeld.
Okay, just to clarify here, I understand that the assessor had the opportunity to look at these statements, and my only issue here was to say that they're not valid for calling actual statements of the subject property because they included two rolls. That's all my only concern here was, so that everybody knew that there were two rolls in it. And I-
So there's some confusion is caused by that.
Well, I think we're just talking different languages.
Because, you know, the adage of law is that somebody should not benefit from creating a situation that is confusing.
Well, you haven't seen my evidence yet.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm not, you can't say that yet. If I confuse you later, then
Okay,
you
well, we'll
should.
see. So far, I've succeeded,
But I just wanted to clarify, all I was trying to point out here is that the statements that the assessor has presented are include two properties. That's all my goal here was. I think we've agreed that that was the case. And just point out for the record that I understand that assessors have very little latitude in asking for penalties, except for the fact they have to give us notice, which they didn't do.
Well,
No, actually,
Anyway.
as
all-
part of this discussion, the minute you enter that,
Right, but then we have the opportunity to respond, and so we move to adjournments and everything else. and-
Agreed.
The issue is relatively minor. It's just for the purpose of preparing the assessment, relatively major for me presenting my case. How's that?
I can agree to that statement.
Now, was I starting my case?
you are.
Okay. So, page 3 and page 4 are an online print from the assessment department of the mailer that was submitted on this property. We received these by logging into the city's website and getting copies of what has been submitted. This isn't a copy of a workup, this is a copy of the questionnaire that was submitted to the city. They're all available on the private login. So if you look at page 3, there's a statement, and it does say 64,858 square feet. We do have a small discrepancy in space, and I believe the discrepancy is due to a unit not quite being completed at the time this was submitted. So we're comfortable using the assessor's number because for our evaluation, it made no difference. Because on the next page is the rent roll, and this shows all the properties that were included in this valuation, or sorry, in this submission. So the statement filled in on the site shows potential income of 1.2 million roughly, plus some recoveries, obviously, but some sign revenue as well, and a document fee. And with recoveries, potential, with the total gross income, 1.43 million, and then expenses, 2.43 million, net operating income, 1,195,290. So this is the actual income impacted by everything that has been done on this site. And it includes the shortfall, because as you can see, they put in their actual utility costs, and they've shown you their actual recoveries. So everything is in this. This would be our bottom line number, even notwithstanding our argument on 5%, 2%, whatever. This includes everything that the city has asked for on their mailer. This isn't a statement even, this is what they asked. So we've declared NOI 119, and this is the same NOI I used on page 1. And that compares to the assessor's NOI of 142. So that's our major difference. And as far as the capitalization rate is concerned, a couple of things to point out is although we have a study that once adjusted indicates a good center would be on my page 7B, what would you call this? I guess a community shopping center. Our study indicates a range of 7 to 7.75, and that's this table right here. We have, I'm just trying to think of our comparables. Within our comparables, I think mostly we have retail strips. Now, one has come to light. I know this is the assessment department's evidence. Garden City Marketplace with another Sobeys in it and a bank and a few other things. Their evidence, which they presented to the board on another occasion, is a cap rate of 7.5%, or I think 7.4%. And I don't know if this particular assessor has seen this workup, but it has been presented in other hearings. We find that is, what's interesting about that particular cap rate, it was owned by Investors Group and sold to an individual. This one is Investors Group has I don't think they have a full interest in it. They have a partial interest in it, and there's another party in it. So the similarities are strong. Now, why I'm suggesting a slightly higher cap than the 7.5 proven by Garden City is that we are in a growing area of Waverly West. And the general rule of thumb is that retail must follow residential, because retail does not like to go into places where there aren't enough houses to buy their products. They always want to be last in the market. And until Waverly West fills up, the interest in this shopping center is weaker, and as a result, the ability to sell it is weaker. Waverly West was originally thought to be a 20 to 30 year project, and the numbers are significantly lower. It looks like it's going to be no more than about 6 or 7 years, maybe 10 years to finish off, because they're going and developing at probably 50% higher rate than they originally planned. And when that happens, then the land that has been preserved for retail ends up being developed, and you can see that the beginning of that right now to meet the residential demand, which will come 3 to 5 years from now. So that's why we're looking at a slightly higher cap. Our range is 7 to 7.75. We're sticking in our range, just going at the higher end of the cap range.
Okay, questions, Ms. Duke?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rocky, have you submitted that other mailer as evidence yet?
The city has.
Your mailer, not mine. Like the electronic one?
This one.
So that you're
We got
submitting
this.
that?
We got this from the website. You can log on and see it.
I got this from the website as well, like not in an electronic form, but this is
Which
the,
one?
this is the mailer that was
The
sent in.
statement, yeah.
I'm looking at difference, like for instance, I'm sorry, carry on.
No, I'm confused as well, and I'm gonna make a suggestion here as to what happened. Is I know that there are two entities in this. I think they both submitted.
Okay,
But you, I don't have the records on this, like, we don't, we got, you know, we got their logins. We
Yeah,
went
no,
to- We went to the site and we said, let us see the documents,
Yeah.
we printed out, and this was, and it's, you know, it backed it up with the rent roll here too, so we know that this, my page 3 and 4 does correspond to your page 5 in terms of occupancy, right? So we are talking about the same thing, and the difference is that the rents are not quite as high as what you have on.
so, I mean, I
I
know.
think you got the Sobeys rent really close, right? Or sorry, Savon. But I think some of the other ones came out a bit higher than actual.
So I do notice differences between these forms, between one piece and another piece. If two mailers are sent in for the same property with different information, like I'm looking at things like taxes, for instance. Your taxes here are 80,000.
Right.
The one that I've got here was, 90,000?
So it must have been the second parcel included, it's the second parcel included.
So, I mean, if this
And
isn't
remember-
misleading, even accidentally misleading, I don't know what to say.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah, I can just say this, okay,
Sure.
if an ambiguity is created, the person who created that ambiguity is not gonna benefit from it. That's my view anyway, I don't know about my panel members, but,
Yeah, but who are you trying to say is gonna benefit from
well, I don't know if it's created a difference, because you're indicating the worksheet is correct anyway. But we'll ask more question, I think it goes to capitalization, which you're talking about now anyway.
it? Well, yeah, my goal right from the beginning was just to point out that there was a.
No, you're asking for a higher cap rate, because you
Right.
base it
On the actual income.
Exactly, so that's fine.
On the income of 1,119,000, and with a higher cap rate, and the assessor's 1.4.
And that's the question right now, so. Any further questions?
I have no further questions. Thank
Mr.
you,
Mackey,
sir.
do you have any questions?
I have no question.
Do you have any
I
questions,
have
sir?
no questions.
So, Mr. Newfeld, one thing that you're asking for higher cap rate based on the fact that the area is not leasing or not being built up as quickly as you thought it would be, or I guess the investor thought it would be. So they have vacancies, more vacancies than they expected at this point?
Well, actually, no, they only have, when you look at the mailer, the one vacancy.
Okay.
So it's a question of demand on the rent. If you're leasing out to someone and you're the first one in, and you think you should get $30 a foot rent, you're not gonna get it until the place, the neighborhood fills in. When the neighborhood fills in.
That might be, but right now that you're basically being assessed on the basis of the rents that are in place.
Right, but, no. But the $30 I quoted, which I plucked out of the blue, was in the assessor's workup. And the actual is lower. And that's the main difference here.
But an investor's gonna look at the rent that's received right now, and they're gonna look at there's upside, because the area is only gonna improve, and perhaps because of that, maybe the assessment's too low.
No, perhaps because of that, in 2 years, the assessor has the opportunity to revisit and reassess, which is why we have reassessment.
I agree with that.
You can't,
But I'm
you're
saying- but I'm
talking
saying-
about the future, you can't do the future.
But the investor looks at the future when they look at a cap rate.
Sure, but then the assessor's gonna object and say, you can't look in the
But you're
future.
asking us to reduce the cap rate, and that's not based on what's the projection right now, it's based on what an investor's gonna look at. And they're gonna, no, hang on, and they're gonna say, there's a lot of potential in this neighborhood, it's building up, and it's only gonna get better. And wouldn't that lend to a lower cap rate?
No, okay, if they looked at it and said, it's gonna get better, they would say, normally I'd cap you at 7, which our study says, but because it's not better yet, I got 5 years of poor income, so I'm capping it at 775.
Okay.
And if I bought it 2 years from now, when it gets reassessed and the neighborhood's better, they're gonna say, I can go a better, more aggressive cap on that. That's all I'm saying, it's the lag time from retail, residential to retail, it's clear everywhere you are, that that there's a lag time.
Okay. Thank you, that's my question. I guess the basic difference between your potential rent is that you've got a management fee of 5%, I guess, that the city doesn't include in theirs, in their work.
No, actually, I'm going from the statement that was submitted, and,
Yeah, I'm looking at page 1, your page 1,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
opposed
but-
to
but-
the city's page 5.
okay,
And that's the biggest discrepancy, I see.
no, in
You deducted for management.
No, but in this case, if you take a look at the actual income, which is 1195, 290, and if you look outlined in blue on page 1, we have 1195, 255. So it's irrelevant, we're just working backwards. We've taken the NOI and worked backwards to show you what those numbers would be if we're in there. So if you don't like the management, it doesn't matter to me, because it doesn't change the actual NOI, which is on page 3.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next property is 660 Osborne Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, you can proceed when you're ready.
660 Osborne. This is the property in question. I would like to state that the tenants pay management fees on this, so management fees have been recaptured. Our assessment is $2,044,000. I do note a sale in 2015. I'm not sure if that's a reasonable market value or not. It's an indicator, let's put it that way. We've used a 6.55% cap rate. This area seems to generate lower cap rates. I have pictures of the property in question. Mr. Chairman, based on this information, I request. Oh, hang on a sec, bear with. Our net operating income that we've used is $133,884. It appears that sorry, you're right there. Based on the income statement that we have here, it appears that the total rent revenue is $113,185. So regardless of any discussion on management, it appears that our assessment is too high based on the NOI. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Questions for Steve?
Yeah, sorry, what did you calculate the NOI at?
Well, the NOI for
From the
the
statement?
assessment
Right.
was 144,254. Now,
Sorry,
144.
right, okay.
254. And then when I look at the mailer here, without doing any calculations, the first page, sorry, not the first page, the income statement on this page shown as page 1 of 2. The net revenue is 194.
That includes recoveries, though.
Yes.
Oh, I see, so your potential rent 144, page, actual statement is showing, I believe it's 113?
It is showing 113, however, the income statement shows a net loss, so I guess the value has no value, the property has no value.
Yeah, you'll notice there's a mortgage payment in there, so.
Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
what you were saying though, I just wanna clarify is that, the base rent, assuming it was everything was recovered, is showing 113,185 as the potential rent, and your assessment department has 144,254. I think that's what you were saying?
Well, that's what I was saying, but I mean, recovery revenue is revenue as well, right?
Well, yes, but the recovery revenue, since you brought that up, is 81,000. The operating expenses are 92,000. You see that? So it's $9,000 short of full recovery.
So the 194 minus the 92, yeah, it looks like what, 102,000 roughly?
Yes, that would bring
Plus
it.
or minus, that would be what the NOI should roughly be, exclusive of any management discussion.
And but that's also as full though. There's no vacancy in this, is there?
I don't believe so.
No, so then you have to, even if you disagree with the management, you'd have to do a vacancy allowance.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, we've used a 4% vacancy rate.
I'm only asking you these questions because I think my NOI is a little on the low side.
Okay.
And I think it should be a touch higher,
Okay.
but if we're getting close to at least agreeing with what the statement would indicate.
Yes.
Thank you. And other than what's on your page 6, have you brought the board any evidence of capitalization rates and those?
Well, let's see what I got here. I have a page here, page 6, which is our information on cap rates. I have no further supporting information, nor have I been privy to any of the information as far as generating cap rates go. My specific blurb is, if we include management, then cap rate should be lowered. That's all I can say on that.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newfield. Mr. Manager, do you have any questions to the assessor?
No.
Mrs. Spillers?
No comments.
Okay, so just for clarification then, you indicated you thought your NOI might be a little bit high,
Yes, sir.
based on the information that was submitted.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Newfield asked you if you agreed with the 102,000, I think what you said you did, and then Mr. Newfield also indicated, but you haven't reduced that by 4% for a vacancy factor.
And he did say it was a little low, right?
No, I said mine was a little low.
Yours was a little low.
Yeah, so I'm thinking,
So I'm asking you, would you agree that 102 would probably be a correct NOI and that it'd be done to a 4% vacancy factor?
Seems reasonable.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's my questions. Oh, as far as cap rate is concerned, looking at the center and the pictures, you think the cap rate might be a little bit aggressive from the city's part?
You know, I can only go on anecdotal information.
Okay.
You know, I see cap rates of 9% in the north end, which has its challenges. And then I see an area southwest of the city, which seems to be really developing and really attracting high-quality retail. So to say it's aggressive, I can't agree with that. I don't have enough information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Neufeld, your turn.
yes, thank you, and yes, I'm.
Your question's already been asked, so
I've
you
been
can
asked,
answer your
I
evidence, yes.
know, I'm going with my evidence,
Okay.
and yes, I'm agreeing for the record that my NOI of 94,000, I've been looking at the statement, and I think that it's a touch on the low side. I'm agreeing on 102,000 less the vacancy, which would represent the statement quite admirably. I think that's somewhere around 98,000, my calculation.
And again, so we're in agreement that that's the actual. As far as the capitalization rate is concerned, this is Osborne, South Osborne. There's, the aggressive capitalization rates will obviously occur in power centers, near power centers, because that's where the retail draw is. So this site will be a local neighborhood service. I think I agree actually with something I heard from the assessors, is that we see rates all up and down the board on these strip mall caps. And there seems to be no really intelligent, easy to explain reason why this is happening, other than probably local purchaser motivation. On our page, one day we'll number these right. On our second, page 13, we have the beginning of some cap rates. Actually, it would be our page 16, which is the fourth page in from the end. And there was a few capitalization rates of strip malls I was going to show you. The first is 1799 Portage, 7.96. This, incidentally, I appraised this property for sale, so the cap rate is incredibly accurate. The downside on this property is that the parking was tight, and it probably could have capped a bit lower had they had adequate parking. The one at the bottom, 819 Sargent, capped at 10.8%, and that capped poorly because of the location and because there's second floor office, and when you cap and you take in the potential rent to create your cap, you fail to take into account how poor the performance actually has been on this, because it was capped on a hypothetical basis, not on an actual. So that it should be lower than that. Page 17 are two more, 3554 Pembina, capped at 7.8%. Not much of a difference between the subject property, a collection of local and national users. And the last one is 5114 Roblin, which I did the cap and evaluation on that as well at 7.81%. The upside in that one, and why that one is better than the subject, is that anchor tenant was a Royal Bank, and the purchaser was very happy to get a AAA tenant in, as opposed to the subject, which has no AAA tenants. They're all local covenant strength. So I am talking about covenant strength, and the tenants, for example, just to clarify why I say that there's no great covenant strength, Medicine Shop, which is a franchise, local covenant strength, Physio Clinic, local, Pizza King, local, Oakwood Cafe, local, and Subway, which is a franchise. It's not Subway International, it's a franchisee. So all of them have local covenant strength. So,
Except Subway leases are all controlled by the.
No, they're not.
They are,
no,
they are.
I guarantee you they're not.
They are, because if they want to evict the tenant, or the
We have to get
franchisee-
we should get Mr. Cowlson in to testify. He owns two Subway franchises.
Yeah, and he's only got a sublease.
He's got two leases.
He's got a sublease though, and the master lease is held by the
Also,
franchisor.
there are, the master leases in the franchise business, and I've had franchises myself in the food service business, they're getting out of that business. They don't wanna be in the business because they're on the hook for it. Tim Hortons used to be nothing but master leases. The reason why, if you wanna get rid of a bad
Exactly.
operator,
Yeah.
it's easier to sever the lease than it is to make them lose the franchise, because of the loss with franchise removal. They're not covering them anymore though.
Okay.
Mom, I work for several
Okay, if
Subway
you tell me that's
franchises.
the latest, okay, that's
Okay.
part of the information I remember, but okay, go ahead.
No, I think it's just a chance for you and I to argue more.
Well, I don't want to argue with you, but I mean, if you say you have more up-to-date information than I have,
If you take a look, for example, Tim Hortons, who are publicly traded, you can see this, that their net amount of head leases has declined dramatically. They're basically closing down the property division to focus on operations, and that's just, because it presents them with the potential in the investment market for a cash call on a bad operation. They want out.
Okay, you're saying that that's the case now. I'll admit to you that my information is based on when I was representing franchisees years ago, and it's been a while, so I have to admit that my information might be outdated. Thank you.
Well, I've had similar experience from 40 years ago when I started, and I had some franchises. In any event, all I'm saying here is that the style that this is focused on is not going to attract the Class A investor. And I'll also state here that I didn't put in the 8.25 here myself. I'm not preparing these, and so I come to these hearings, I'm going to make some modifications on my personal understandings, which is why I think that the NOI is as low. It should have been about 98,000, and I probably wouldn't have capped at 8.25. I think we're probably in the high 7.75 in that neighborhood. That would be my opinion. So my value would be 98 divided by, would be about 1,264,000. And I'm ready to admit that a more aggressive cap at 7.5 could be seen in the market on a competition for someone. This is what we call like a bite-sized asset, like people can afford to buy it, but you know, that's why sometimes you get crazy investors who can pay a bit more.
Okay, thank you. Question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When these cap rates were set, I understand that your standard procedure is to closing costs?
Well, when you see our information that's published on the web and which you've included in your report, we would take the sale, add in closing costs, which commissions and land transfer tax, and it inflates the price and drops the cap. And that's not the way we do it here, nor do we do it in appraisal. So then we have to do an adjustment, and that adjustment is somewhere around half a point higher on average.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Madden, any questions?
No questions.
Ms. Billy Chris, any questions?
No questions.
I don't have either. Thank you very much. So the next property is at 125 Spearfield Boulevard. Mr. Tippler, you ready to proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, property in question is 125 Spearfield. We have an assessment of $12,218,000 for the 2020 roll. I must at this point state that all tenants pay their management fee, so management fee has been recaptured.
No, I'm gonna object to that statement.
Well, you know, you can actually ask questions after.
Okay.
But now you're not asking questions yet.
Based on that, I'm gonna just take another look at my information, sir. Perhaps the better way for me to phrase that is each tenant pays a management fee to the owner. I have a number of rent comparables. We have two income streams here, one for the property at General and one for the car wash. The car wash is owner occupied, so we don't have a rent for that,
Or a management fee.
or a management fee. That's the catch, thank you. I would say then that the car wash would not pay the self-management fee unless they feel that that's needed. We have an assessment of $12,218,000. I have the standard information here. Cap rate study. Back of the book here is the mailer that we've received, which appears to only relate to this one property. And based on this information, bear with me just for a sec. The NOI that we've used total is $869,561. And the actual NOI is $746,926, but that does not include the car wash. So whatever appropriate rent should be included on the car wash, plus the $746 would be a fair NOI.
746.
Yes, that would likely reduce the assessment. Very good.
Okay, so you're saying your income stream number 2 then, which you have at 18,547, you agree should be, what did you say, 749?
746,926
746,926.
plus the car wash.
Yes. Okay.
So it appears to me that we're a little high on that one.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. Steve?
Just to clarify, and we're gonna spend too much time on this management stuff, but you kind of keep opening the door here.
I know, I have.
On your statements, I'm looking at an entry firstly for entry 0141 South Ocean Restaurant.
South Ocean Restaurant, yes, sir.
Now, you'll note there that they're paying $1.55 for property management recoveries.
Yes, sir.
And you can see that this is a statement where the property management is been separated by a time period, correct?
Yes, sir.
And how does that, but you were looking obviously at this earlier and you noted the same thing I did, is that other people don't pay the same recovery rates in the same time period.
Definitely,
Okay.
definitely.
For example, the one immediately below it actually pays 2 sets of management fees, which total $1.37 a foot in the same period.
Yeah.
Okay. That's, so it's an inconsistent recovery. And you had said an NOI of 746 plus the NOI from the car wash. Is that what you were saying? NOI or potential? I forgot.
Yes, NOI.
NOI, so, and your NOI in the car wash was 49,259?
But they have a different cap rate then.
Yeah, correct, yeah, that's their problem.
Yeah, 49,259 is what we've used.
So roughly 795,000,
Roughly, yeah.
roughly.
Yeah.
And that, I'm just, in your stream 2, you've got all the pad sites. Look, I'm just pointing out, I think you're kind of low. Yeah, I know I don't like to say that, but
I hate it when that happens.
I hate that too. I'm wondering if you're not missing DQ or, in there. So that's another pad site. No, I see DQ here. It's just that we're not very far off on the car wash, but we had calculated to 830,000, and you're lower than us now at 795.
Oh,
For a total.
Nice.
And I had personally gone over this, so that's why I was more interested in the right number
Sure.
than any sort of positional disadvantage or advantage.
Okay.
Okay. And just wondering if you've had an opportunity to ever inspect this site.
Bear with me just for a sec, I just want to look at the pictures and see if that... I have driven by this before, but not with an eye for inspection.
Okay.
I did remember from looking at the pictures and looking from the aerial photo that the car wash seems to be kind of an odd spot. Maybe not as functional as it could be, you know?
Yeah, that would be my observation as
Yeah.
well. Okay. Thank you then, those are my questions.
Questions, Mr. McAvoy?
I have no questions.
You enjoyed this?
No question.
So I'm wondering, in this one, it seems that the city's cap rate, in this case, seems to be low. I mean, like, when I'm saying by low, I mean, seems to be high, actually, because you have a property in Osborne, and this is a newer area. I just find it hard to comprehend how Osborne could be capped at 6 I think it was 15 perhaps, and this at 7.15.
The 7.15, yeah, good question. It could be down to layout, or we're not always
Yeah.
privy to those decisions.
Okay, well, it's done, I guess, mechanically, I know from the
Yeah.
modeling, but,
Yeah.
you know, it just seems to me that we'll see, maybe Mr. Newfield, I think it should have a higher cap rate, well,
You know,
wants to know.
one should be higher, and the other one should be lower.
You know, yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
okay, thanks, that's my questions.
Right, so I, from the statement, our workup of the statement, and then adding in a potential income for the owner's car wash is 830,660. Now I'm higher than the assessor, but like I said, in all honesty, a lot of familiarity with this property and the statements over the years, so let me just see something here. Oh. Wow. Well, our workup is wrong. Let's see what you're coming at. You're using the same statements I had. Yeah, you are. So our people made an error. The revenue without the car wash is 780,000, 781,057. And then the car wash, we had put a potential on it of 45,000, and you would have put a potential on it of 51,000. I see my problem. Prior period adjustments.
Is this your evidence, Mr. Newfield?
I'm finding my error here, okay? The people who prepared this, and I was opening my big mouth to say I had looked over this, but they gave me the wrong number. On page 3, there are prior period recovery adjustments and interest revenue of 31,000, you note that. We incorporated that in our workup, we came with an NOI of 830,000. The assessor just came and said he thought it was $795 based on looking at the statement, and he did not include those recoveries, so we made a mistake there. So I'll just say for the record that our NOI is wrong. We're probably in and around $800,000, it should have been. And the assessor said possibly $795 in his earlier workup, so we're going to agree that it's $800,000 if that's fine with the assessor.
That includes the car wash?
Includes the car wash, and he nodded yes.
No objection there.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, so you're agreeing on 800,000, there's a total NOI, but then we have two different cap rates though.
Right, and so if we're somewhat in agreement on what the actual NOI is, as far as the cap rate is concerned, now my issue with this site is, I go here quite a lot, so I can tell you every single problem with this. This is where I buy all my wine, and since I love my wine, I go here a lot. The owner built this car wash on a pad site in front of the restaurant, which is killing the restaurant's visibility. So over the years, they're not getting a lot of rent out of it. And you can see that today, from the rent rolls, that number is a fair bit lower than what you would expect in the neighborhood. And that's an issue of the visibility. The other problem with the site is, if you notice in the rent rolls, it's getting $14 when the neighborhood is really supporting an $18 plus rate. You've probably seen that in prior assessments. And it's the visibility that's killing it. To compare it, their new restaurant at the other corner, the Ben and Florentine, I believe that number is significantly higher. So, yes, that shows up in, you could say on one hand that it shows up in the rent. Yeah, Ben and Florentine is $25. And it's accounted for in the rent partially, but it's also from an investor. He has a property that will not perform as well as the market, so a discount's required. The other thing is the worst thing about this mall, the thing I hate the most, is little kids. Shelley Shearer Dance Studio is right in the middle of the mall, and on the times of the week, the evenings and the weekend, when you would like to go out and buy yourself a nice bottle of wine or case of wine, as it may be, the parking lot is jam-packed full of parents who take over the entire parking lot. Now, I joke about it myself, but I know that from a leasing perspective, it's given them a lot of problems on leasing the site out. The restaurant has complained bitterly about it. They've put up special signs not to park there for its restaurant. The other tenants have issues with it. They've lost one of their music tenants, so they're constantly turning over tenants. And their goal is to try to find a tenant who brings in their crowds in the off hours. So a good one for them was the pharmacy, generally, who will be more during the daytime. But that's just one small tenant. The retail's hurting. So that's my reason on the higher cap rate. And I think that we're probably a little aggressive on the 8.5, I do agree. But the other consideration here is the concept of differential cap rates for different parts of the building. That's not the way it works in real life. It's one cap rate. It's not a blended rate. Generally, investors are going to default to the worst possible risks. And the last risk here is that car wash. A car wash has a life of 25 years, period. That's not, that's because of moisture. And when I say a life, that's it can be extended, obviously, with maintenance. So you can continue to maintain the property, you look for the moisture penetrations, you fix them. In the case of this property, it's been the degradation of the parking lot surrounding the car wash, which has been a major issue. And the car wash itself is tilt-up cement, but even with the sturdiest construction, the lifespans are lower, which means that if you're capitalizing a property you're generally looking at a 35 to 40-year window on your capitalization, your investment window, at which point of time there's still gonna be some salvage value at the end. So with a rapidly depreciating building asset, you have to bump it up. Basically what it means, car wash have to be capped higher than retail, not lower. And with those things, I think we're probably looking at a rate that's closer to 8%. And so we're requesting a value of 10 million.
Okay,
800,000 at 8%.
okay, thank you. Any questions?
No, sir.
Mr. McNair?
No question.
No questions?
I don't either, thank you. Okay, so our next property is 1725 Gordon Avenue. Mr. Cook, when you're ready, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, property in question, 1735 Gordon Avenue. We have an assessment of $2,621,000 on this property. Excuse me, we have 3 subject leases in place. According to the mailer, each of these tenants is paying a management fee.
Oh, don't say that again.
Again? Oh, let me think here. One of them must be owner occupied, which is why we haven't got the full leases. So, any arm's length leases are, pay their own management. Any property operated by the owner may or may not do that. When I took a quick look at our NOI versus the NOI on the mailer, I'm coming out very close to this. Actually, it appears that the mailer is indicating that we may be a little low. I've got the mailer NOI at 194,449. Again, not including management.
I don't.
This is not, no page, these
Oh,
are just my
okay,
calculations.
because I'm just looking at your statement here, that's all.
Okay. You know, if I take the rents times the area occupied, allow vacancy, expenses at 2%, shortfall at $8, I'm coming out to 194,449 actual versus our number of 187,372. Now, we've used a cap rate of 7.15% on this. Based on this information, it appears that a confirmation is in order.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Steve,
Sure, and you were reading from something that I don't have in front of me.
Yeah, no, it's my own notes and I'm not submitting them,
Okay.
but I can go through them if you like.
I think what he did was he added up all the rents and.
Right, so-
Additionally, he knew a higher NOI.
I was just gonna actually do the same thing by looking at the last page in your submission. And the last page in your submission, for the period in question, I'm actually getting 8142 plus the owner's space. You see that? 142,000.
I think that's accurate. What I did, and this may be incorrect, was as I used our rental rate for the Diamond Gallery, which is the owner occupied.
Right.
So what you say is correct. We've added 30,191 for the owner.
Okay, but this last page is showing approximately 62, I'll get this wrong, 53,768 plus 29,736 plus 62,016 is potential, okay? 430.
$145,520,
Well, I had 430, but I'm sure
close enough for government work. eh?
that's fine with me, yeah. And then plus the owner's space,
Yeah, where I've quoted 194, 449 would be more accurate to say 145, 500 plus or minus,
plus.
plus the owner's.
And the owner's space
share.
is, and you got it at how much?
The owner's space Diamond Gallery, we had at $21.72.
Okay, so there's a partial difference, 2172. And, on the 1390, so another 30,000, is that?
191.
Yeah, so add those together and you get 175, 430 for, potential rent. Is that what you got you're saying 175?
If you look at the other work on page 4, I think it looks like he's
No,
got 202,759.
Right, but, okay, wait a second. 10,571, 10,571. Yeah, you've got it split, you've got page 4, you've got split up in 5 units, and the rental is actually 4 units. So I guess what I'm backtracking on here is I thought you said you were talking about the actual statement supported this, and I'm just going back to the actual rental, I'm coming up with 145 plus the owner's space, arguably at 30,000 for a total of 175,000.
So I've got, in our system, I've got 5 different premises.
Yeah.
Yeah, on page number 2, you show 3 leases and then the owner's space, which should be 4.
But you'll notice that,
I've got Lux Label.
Lux Label is 2, add them together,
Yeah.
it's the same.
So for, Lux Label is 1,416 square feet plus 1,130 square feet.
Okay.
So Lux Label, we've got it shown as 2 premises, but more correctly, it would be shown as 1 premise of 2,546 square feet.
Okay.
So, yeah, this is a little confusing.
Well, it gets even worse if you look at the statement, so.
So Lux Label, we're showing a rent of 2189. Oh, okay, I'm seeing where, when you're looking at the rent there for
Right.
Lux Label, there's actually 2 rents that are paid there.
Okay.
They pay the 25,989.96,
25, 989.
989.96.
Okay.
Plus, they also pay 29,736 for a total of 55,725.96. So Lux Label pays 55,725.96. Vittorio Rossi pays another 53,768.76.
53,
Okay.
53,768.76.
768. Okay.
And then the Manitoba Dental
Yep.
pays $62,016.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so that gives 171.
Okay, and plus the 30 you've attributed to the owner
Yes, sir.
gets you to 201, okay.
Okay.
Excuse me. so basically, it comes down to trying to decide what a reasonable rent is for dining gallery.
Right.
Which is shown as a C2. So if you look at the C2 rents, I've got $16 for 23 hours. So the rent I've used is in the middle of that. It's anyone's decision whether that's fair and reasonable.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, just one. Sorry, I just wanna make sure I get this right here. Okay, so that was your calculation on the rent. The question then, that was the calculation, looking at the rent roll and trying to relate it to the potential rent. Next, the statement, I'm cluing in here, a little slow here. The statement, which is a couple of pages back, we're showing income of $160,000 with rent and parking, not including the owner. Is that how you read that?
So 160 base rent plus parking rent.
Right, well, 160 includes, it's 155 base rent, 4,400 parking rent, 160,000 is their potential rent on the statement. And that does not include the owner's space.
Well, and
And
it
you-
does say that there.
Right, and the other calculation was 171,000.
Yeah, the calculation based on the rent roll was that, yeah.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions. I'm assuming that the same goes for the cap rates as you brought to the table and no other actual cap rates?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Matt, do you have any questions to the session?
No questions.
Ms. Billingers, any
No
questions?
questions.
Okay, so adding up all the rents and if we attribute the rent that you've given to the owner, you come up with a very, very slightly lower potential rent. I think by like $1,000 over what you're working on.
Yeah, it's very close, $1,000, you're right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. For my workup, what we used was the statement, which had income of $160,000, not including the owner's space. We added in $23,000 for that space at a rent of $17 a square foot. Now, when we went through the rent roll and the statements, there were a number of non-recoverables in there. This isn't a very sophisticated operation with the degree of owner occupancy. Taking the statements and calculating that the actual nets indicates that they range between $16 and $20 a square foot. And so we put a rate of $17 a foot on the owner's space. And I noted that the assessor was at $21. We're basing ours on what the other rents were in the property. Arguably, it could be a couple of cents higher, but that's how we got to 183,000. The other parameters on the vacancy, we did not address the vacancy problem in the vacancy rate because at time of valuation, it was full. We're gonna look at the capitalization rate for that. Again, we've made an allowance on the, for non-recoverables I'm not calling it a management fee, I'm calling it non-recoverables of 5%. And in this case, the statement doesn't calculate a separate non-recoverable category, but the costs of operation are $135,000 divided by 10,000 is approximately $13 a square foot. And I don't believe that the recoveries in all cases reach that number, and that's where our differences lie. The NOI then we're relying on is $160,000, and the reason we're capitalizing it at 8% is two reasons. Firstly, it's a two-story property, and in the suburbs, the second story, everybody thinks it's great at building a building, may as well slap on a second story, double my income. No, it never happens that way. Second stories are tough to maintain on the market and very low demand. The barrier-free issue is one thing, so you're not putting a lot of retail up there. You've got to be barrier-free. There is no lift in this building. The second problem with it is when this property was built, in order, and I'm familiar with it from day one because our company's been involved, when it was built, in order to get the zoning permission to develop it with the parking that it had, the upper floor had to be classified as office. And because an office allows one space per 1,000 square feet, whereas retail is one space per 250 square feet. And as a result, the upper floor is restricted usage. Even the fact that the market isn't the least bit interested in the upper floor space for retail to begin with, but then it's just restricted usage. I saw a sketch in here somewhere. I don't know if I put it in or the assessor put it in, building sketch, just so you can take a look at the parking issue. And on the assessor's page 8, I think has the aerial. When you develop adjacent to residential zones, the restrictions are far greater than if you're not abutting a residential zone. Even though we do have a zoning of C2, there's a setback from abutting residential areas, and of course, the variance on the parking requires permission from the city, which means a public hearing, and I've participated in many of these public hearings, and the way they got their development approved was to state that the upper floor would only be office. Now, they've had many, many problems. One of their original ideas was they wanted a hair salon in the upper level, and this is right at the same time that hair salons were allowed to sell alcohol, and which is, I think is a great idea, by the way, but the deal fell through because they couldn't get an occupancy permit, because they agreed that there's only going to be office on the second floor, lose that tenant. And therein lies the problems with any second floor. And so when you remember what I had said earlier about our capitalization rates, and I pointed out the one example of 819 Sargent, and I said it had two problems. One, it had a location which wasn't good, and the second was the abundance of second floor space. So a second floor will cap higher, a building with a second floor will cap higher than a retail strip, like, for example, 660 Osborne discussed earlier. So our valuation is at $2,008,000. I'm not changing that. I think it's reasonable. Just point out that the previous assessments are not necessarily what are represented here, where we finally, after 6 years, reached agreement at Case Management on valuation on the site, so they did come down. I think our last agreement was at 1.8 million, the one I signed. So I think we're consistent with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I note that the rents that you've put here are all lower than the actuals.
No, what I mentioned was we work them out to their net. Like, they're not full recoverable, they're not full recovery rent, it's a semi-gross rent. Now, I probably need like 20 minutes to just double check everything here, but I hadn't looked at this for, since I did the municipal board case management. But regardless of that, they match with the statement at 160,000. The statement's 160, and we have 160 plus the owner space, which we feel is 23. So, I mean, I think I appreciate the question. If you were to question the $17 on the owner space, could it be 18 or 19? Yes, very well. I admit that that is towards the lower end. It could have been higher. Other than that, the rest are the actuals.
Like, for instance, Deluxe is coming out to $21.89 a square foot. What part of it is
On the-
considered gross?
Right, on the right side, it's coming up at 21.89.
Yeah,
And then I'm trying to read the recoveries here. We have a dual recovery line, and so only one of those management fees gets recovered per space. So one space is recovering it at either 51 or 48 cents, and the other side could be 58 cents for the period. You'll see that, whereas in future years, it's changing to 125. And then the CAM and taxes, there's an adjustment in here that is showing in the pages, so that's being credited back. So we just have to know that one, the statement reflects the recovery, and the charges haven't indicated the recoveries back to the tenant. I don't know what the heck rec means.
yeah, I'm not sure about that either. And I mean, when I'm looking at the different management fees, I'm seeing 3 of them that should be paid.
Well, the actual management fee is running, we'll just go back to the costs. Okay, so the actual management fee is $12,876. So I think there's our shortage on recovery right there, because that works out to $1.22 a square foot. And you'll note that in the reference period, number 1 is at 63 cents, moving to $1. Number 2, there's a double entry. One is 51 cents, the other is 48 cents, but in the future, they're moving to $1.25. So they're short recovery at the time. And the number dental is recovering at 85 cents. And there's a surcharge of 63 cents that comes in after the fact. So all of these end up being short of the paid, so you can just adjust it downwards. So the paid on, for example, Manitoba Dental is going to be likely around a little under $17. The shortage on Vittori Rossi is going to be about 30, wait for the right period, be about 60 cents. And then the shortage on Lux Label is going to be 70 cents. And that's what went into our change.
Pardon my lack of understanding here, but where can I look to see that that's being compensated for? Like I know that you gave a bunch of numbers.
Oh, well,
But, you know, when I look at the rent roll, I see amounts that they're supposed to pay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Well, for example, in this particular case, now remember the last case, I said, oops, I made a mistake because there was a recovery and it was a positive, because it was a prior period adjustment. Now, if you look at this statement on your evidence, and we have rent revenue, $160,000, then you have recovery revenue, $132,000, then you have a $14,000 figure, which is the shortage on recoveries that they've then put in. That's not from a vacancy issue of any sort, that's just the shortage on recoveries of $14,000.
that's just them overbilling at one point, and now they're sort of trying
Well,
to even it out.
it's for them putting it on book, but not recovering through a lease. Because this is just a question of a management upgrade on it. And this is what what we do, this is managed by Colliers, and what we do is we put it on book, this is what's supposed to be recovered, but this is all that is actually recovered. And for a variety of reasons. Now, at the beginning of period, you'll notice that there was a vacancy on one of the units, which was a lack of the rent and operating costs. They're actually performing below the 160. And then our NOI, when all is said and done, is 0. This is just a bad statement here. Property tax, total operating expense, $134,000.
You know what, this is going on a long time, we're gonna be here for an hour or two with the way this is going. I think that we've got the material before us. I don't think you have to ask any more questions, Mr. Cook. There's an ambiguity here. It's up to the applicant to provide information that is gonna assist us, and I don't think you have to clarify it anymore.
May I make another question?
Go ahead.
On a separate matter. When you refer to the vacancy adjustment here, that's vacancy and free rent, correct?
Well, that's just
That's a
non-cash.
category, right?
Yeah, that's non-cash.
So I mean, me as an assessor looking at this, I can't determine whether that's free rent or vacancy, right?
Well, in this case, it was an actual vacancy.
Actual vacancy.
And with the vacancy and the shortfall, the actual is about $8,800. And in your valuation, you had allocated $8,100 on vacancy and $3,300 shortfall. So we're actually below the performance that you have. So that's why, for me, it was a non-factor.
Okay.
I think if we go to the bottom line, as we always do, right? And the bottom line is, without the owner's space, it's $134,000 in income. And we're at $160,000 on our NOI, so we're attributing $24,000 of income to the owner's space. And that's how, when you get past all the non-recoverable issues, that's what we're dealing with on the actual statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
No further questions.
Mr. McIntyre, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Mr. Neufeld, if you turn to page 2 and look at the picture of the building, and I turn back to page 1, you're showing on page 19.
Yeah, that's wrong. I circled that on my sheet too, here. I didn't prepare this. I think I know what happened is that you're probably aware of a spreadsheet that the city has on buildings, and I have a copy of it, and this is probably the old building that was torn down.
Demolished.
Yeah. I agree with.
So do you
2000.
agree with the assessor's age of 2008?
Absolutely.
8. I
Thanks.
had the same question. Okay.
It's a test to see if anybody reads this.
Surprise, we do.
I guess I didn't.
No further questions.
I have no questions. Do you have any questions? You said
That was
you
mine,
did.
yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for pointing it out to us, but anyway. go on to the next item then.
Can you take a quick bathroom break, please?
Can I just a very quick summation and then a bathroom break would be great. I know
Okay, let's
it's
take a quick summation here.
Yeah, we are meandering around a bit. Page 5, net income, 134,788, with vacancy that's lower than the assessors, but does not include the owner's space. So I went from 134,788 to 160,000, which is adding on $25,212 in NOI on the owner's space, which is actually fairly close to what the assessor has. So I'm using actual statements plus $25,000 adjustment for the owner's space, net, not gross. The assessor has $30,000 net, which I don't know what that would translate to. So those are the key numbers, and then of course the difference, the actual income is lower than, regardless of what rent you put on this property, the owner's property, the actual income is lower than the assessor's workup by, in my opinion, $27,000 on the NOI. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a 10-second summary.
Go ahead.
I'm showing from the actual mailer, 171,510.72, not including the dining gallery net rent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, wait, that was supposed to go last. That's not net rent though. That's all I'm saying. That's not net rent.
Well,
No, I don't, that's the rent rule.
You know what, this is concluded. Okay. You decided to take your summary first, so Mr. Tiff.
Yeah, but you're making all sorts of comments like you've made up your mind already, and that's troubling me.
Well, let's see what happens. Let's just take 5 minutes.
Yes, I just really want to use that.
Okay.
Did you turn off the?
camera.
Okay, we're resuming, and we're now gonna go to 1431 Gordon Avenue. Mr. Clerk, when you're ready, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was 1431 Gordon, correct?
Gordon Avenue, that's right.
Thank you. Property in question again, 1431 Gordon. We have a $963,000 value on the property, an actual age of 1950 built. The leases that are on the mailer are gross leases. So the numbers showing are $1250 for enabling access, which is 1,200 square feet. $16 for Bonfire Bistro, which is 2,100 square feet. And $1350 for the Creative Paper Gallery at 2,350 square feet. Now, these are gross amounts. If I direct you to the mailer, the last page here, there are a few general admin recoveries, and when I add those in, we have an adjusted rent for the enabling access of $12.92 a square foot per year. Bonfire Bistro turns from $16 to $16.24. Creative Paper Gallery goes from $13.50 to $13.92 square foot. When I add those numbers up, I come up with $82,320. Our potential rent is $76,639. So, I mean, when I look at these numbers in isolation, it appears that we may be possibly low. However, I'm not asking for any increase, believe me. I'm asking for a confirmation at 963. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Nico?
I'm sorry, I didn't get where you're going. You added recoveries to a gross rent
Sure.
and increased the net rent.
Increase the gross rent?
No, your rents on page 4, you said you just increased them all.
I'm sorry.
Like, you grossed them.
What I did was I gave the calculation showing what the gross amount was. Like, for instance, enabling access at $12.50 a month, $12.50 a year.
Right.
And then they pay an extra $500 a year for
Right.
general events, so they're paying $12.92 square foot.
Okay, and you're saying, and that, what space is that?
That's for premise ID 11882
Okay.
at 1,200 square feet.
So you're saying they're paying, say that again, 12
$12.92 adjusted.
gross
Once you add in
recoveries.
the recoveries.
They're paying gross, that amount. But
Gross is $12.50, right?
right, and on page 4, your net is $13.69, which is higher. It's, goes the other way, isn't it?
Okay, no, that's fine. 1369, no disagreement there.
Okay.
The next premise, Bonfire Bistro, $16 is what they pay gross,
Plus
plus $4.99 equals $16.24 square foot.
gross.
Wouldn't it be net once you've
No,
adjusted?
then you have to take off the expenses, you have to subtract the expenses paid out of that to arrive at your net. So now you're saying 1620 gross, and you've got it in the books at 1418 net. To arrive at that number, then you have to go to line item 217 in the mailer, divide that by per square foot, and subtract it from the 1625 to get your net.
So you subtract those numbers?
You're on the right track, you got step 1 right. You take all the rent they pay,
Yeah.
then you subtract all the expenses the building paid, and then you get your net.
Okay.
Okay, well, anyway, aside from that, that page here, if you go back 3 pages to the statement, and in the statement, do you take issue that with the income then at 102,404 being the total income, including recoveries?
Well, I mean, I don't know where that comes from, but as far as rents go.
Well, I
think
mean,
it's
it would
82,000.
come from the last page, add up the 2 columns, multiply by 12.
I think what we have on the last page as well is one spot has been leased by 2 people for parts of the year.
Oh, yeah, there was an expiry in November of 17 and a new tenant right away in 12 of 17, so you would then just ignore the last entry and take the other 3, add them up.
So basically, you're indicating that your net NOI is 62,821 rather than,
Right, because I was just, I mean, there seemed to be a bit of confusion on your methodology. Like I said, you got part 1 right, but then you got to subtract the expenses, and
Okay.
if you agree, I mean, if you don't want to agree with that, that's fine, but I think that's the right way to do it.
You know, I'm just trying to adjust to a net rent.
Okay, so, but they, in other words, have claimed that their net income as full is 62,821, and that's what they've claimed here, right?
Well, I mean, when I add up those numbers, I get 82, but I'm doing it wrong, so please enlighten me.
Well, now, and the other question as full, you do note that they lost a tenant November 30th, and the new tenant came in December 1st, so
Yes.
there was no vacant period in this building?
No, sir.
Okay.
any other questions?
No.
Mr. Mack, any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Lewis?
No
I
question.
don't either. Mr. Infant, can you go ahead?
Well, that's my presentation, I just heard it.
Basically, so let's look at your arithmetic on page 1 and see what.
Right, so I use 62,828
Right?
as potential income as full. They've demonstrated they're full, and that's how much it's making, that they've submitted to the assessor. Why do I have 828, and I thought it was 821? Okay, well, we round it up. I don't
Okay, so
know.
basically, you take off the vacancy, you take off the shortfall,
Right.
and you're also putting management,
The
which may or may
disputed-
not be agreeable.
Yes, the heavily disputed management, right?
Okay,
And NOI 54,285, and we're capping, other differences, we are capping higher. This one, I'm pretty sure I got the age right on this one, this is 1950. And it's more than likely the owner has owned it since new, and on Corrigan. It's just a small, when you look at the picture on page 2, you can see that the restriction on the parking, the land plan area 2 to 1. So it's in tight. The Bonfire Bistro, as a matter of fact, a restaurant requires 1 space per 100 square feet, so they actually need 21 stalls for that, and then for retail, it's 250, so they're well under the parking, but it had a restaurant in it before, so we can call it a legal non-conforming parking. It's just a difficulty of future parking or any change in it. I told you the story in 1735 Corrigan of a demolition and a rebuild, neighborhood opposition, restrictions on being able to do what they wanted to do. And it's the same story here, except they haven't done a demolition. So the upside down is that it's less attractive for a redevelopment play. It's an older building, and 8.25 was quite reasonable. Last year, I know you're not bound by it, last year the cap rate we asked for and received was 8.5%. So look how aggressive I'm being. I'm dropping a whole quarter point on the cap. Thank you very much.
thank you. Any questions?
I would like, if you guys could all grant me a little bit of leeway here, I would love to ask Rocky how they're not paying $82,303 a year to the owner.
Oh, okay.
I think they are paying that amount. I think with Matthew's position is though that there are expenses and they're gross leases, not net leases. So
Okay, thank you.
to get NOI, he has to reduce it by the expenses.
Okay.
I don't mind because this, I know this assessor's asking a very honest question, and I know he's not trying to position, any position on this, so.
Well, if there's no question of the gross leases, I think that,
I'm just adding up all the income on the page. And you total it, and then you multiply times 12, so it's 8,600 times 12, I get $104,000 per annum in income, in inflow of revenue, not income. And they claimed 102,404, and I think there may have been a bump. Oh yeah, I see, there was a small change in the period. So take your last page, take all 6 of those figures, add them, multiply them times 12, that's gross income. And then you go to the statement page and subtract their expenses, which includes the taxes, repairs, management, insurance, which is 39,000. And that's how you get the number. We've been looking at our statements where they recover from tenants for taxes. They don't in this case.
So, just to make sure that I understand, thank you. Their costs are $39,583 for the property.
Right.
That's their costs to operate the property,
That's correct.
including management,
Yeah.
which is another.
Well, right, this particular landlord is generally, you'll see in their statements that they'll have separate metering on all the units, so tenants pay their own utilities, but they pay taxes, repairs, insurance, and management themselves. And that's their style, and they've been doing it since 1908.
All righty, thank you very much.
They're gonna say they invented this.
any questions, Mr. McNair?
No questions.
No questions. Okay, and last but not least is 2090 Gordon Avenue. When you're ready, Mr. Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Property in question, 2090 Gordon Avenue. In this property, management fees are not recovered.
Okay,
Whoa. So an adjustment may be in order for management fees.
okay.
We have a total value of $4,199,000. We've used a 6.55 cap rate. Comparing the rents here in the subject. These are all shown as net lease, so this is my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. So based on what you said, before you ask any questions, can I ask one, Mr. Ewald? Mine?
Sure.
So if you use your arithmetic and if you agree that there is maybe a management fee that isn't recovered, would it be,
I've been instructed to ask for the rent to be adjusted in lieu of management fee.
and have you adjusted the rent?
Should a decision be made by the board that it would not include management fees and that it would include adjusted rent.
Okay,
That's
so what you're
fine.
saying was we should reduce the rent.
That's my
POI.
request, sir, yes.
It's like, okay.
Yeah, it's,
Okay, I'm sorry, but I act as attorney. Go ahead, Mr. Ewald.
Well, you're no different than
I
the rest of
saw
us.
some clarification here.
We're always been acting out of turn all day. So notwithstanding that his position is based on, we know it's based on instructions, and they've misunderstood. It's not property management that this is for. Thank you. On your submission, you provided the mailer. And in the mailer, this is the document, it's marked at the top, page 1 of 6. And you can confirm that line 218, net operating income, is $260,540. Line 218.
I'm sorry, what I
It's
have here
about
doesn't show line numbers.
Oh, well, it's like in the brackets.
Like I've got, oh yeah, I see, 108, right?
It's the sixth from the end?
Oh,
No,
218,
no,
218, thank you.
218, net operating income,
Okay. Agreed.
260,000, and then in box, or line 302, it notes 0% vacant, you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Second question is, I'm familiar with the history of this property.
I would have to say no, sir.
Okay, so you're not aware that it was a operational dry cleaner at one point in its life?
No, sir.
And this was built in 1980, is that correct?
That is the information I have as well, yes.
And of course, even you do have the copy of the filing, which indicates that the owner is Quinton's Limited?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, those are my questions.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. McIntyre?
No questions.
No questions.
No questions.
Thank you. So we started with the operating income as full, $260,540, and then subtracted for vacancy, management, other, and shortfall. We have an NOI of $227,000. So in this case, I've sold myself short because we haven't deducted for property management on top of this other expense. They self-manage. But regardless, without dispute, I don't think they can dispute any of these parameters, even though I would suggest it should even be lower, but 227,292 is the NOI based on actual income with parameters that are acceptable for both parties. We've capped at 8%. In my other testimony, I've talked about strip malls and the range that we look at for strip malls, and I've shown you some examples that in our analysis have ranged from, I believe, 7.8% to 10.8%. Now, normally this would be a very attractive strip mall. It's in a good location, and even on our page 7B, our market studies indicate between 7 and 8% should be considered. The major problem with this site is that it was a former dry cleaning site, so the requirements in this day and age for environmentals, whether it's clean or not, are higher. The half-life of the chemical that's used, which is something like a carbon tetrachloride, is 500 years? Something ridiculously high. So there's always, now the issue with this is that redevelopment of the site for residential uses would be prohibitive and require a very deep clean. For commercial sites, there's less of an issue because we don't have dwelling units on this. For an industrial usage, which incidentally would never be allowed in Corridon, probably almost no cleanup requirements. So in an investor's mind, now many investors these days, probably 60% of the investment market are no longer accepting environmentally impacted properties in their portfolios. A major one in Canada, the Ontario Teachers Pension Fund, will not take in an environmentally impacted property. Almost all the European funds will not buy them, which means that we've already reduced the available investors by 50% in the marketplace because everybody's going to green. So we have a limited buyer pool. Now, potential investor for this would be at the local level, less competitive in the market. Therefore, in our Collier's range of 7 to 8, we have put it at the higher end of the range. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Is this property on the impacted properties list?
It's on the inventory.
It is, eh?
Yeah.
Has there been a stage 2 done on it?
I have never seen a stage 2, and I've never asked the question.
Oh, okay.
I know there are other sites have, their main one on Mulvey and Pembina has had several stage 2s.
Okay. So contamination is presumed but not quantified? Sorry.
Yeah, well, in
Not
the
presumed.
way.
There's potential contamination.
Agreed.
Well, in the way the environmental works is that phase 1 is useless. You would never be asked for a phase 1, you're automatically going to phase 2.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah, any financing would need a clear, or at least a defined stage 2.
Yeah, and then with it, there'd be guaranteed requirements for test holes and long-term monitoring.
Okay, so this is actually where the dry cleaning plant was?
Well, in the old days, they had, all the dry cleaners had on-site, and they phased them out as the carbon, the tetrachlorides became known, that we shouldn't use these anymore, and that was, I don't
Okay.
know, sometime in the late 80s.
I was just curious, because I had a property at 500 St. Mary's where I mentioned, like, it's a Quinton's and it's sort of a smaller property.
It's not a Quinton's, because we would have, unless they no longer own it.
St. Mary, sorry, not St. Mary's, but Mary, St. Mary.
Where Dessert Sensations is?
Yes.
That was Perth's.
Yeah, and I made that statement that, there might be a contamination issue, and the guy laughed, going, this is just a depot here. So this wasn't a depot, there was actual chemical.
All the small sites did on-site dry cleaning in the beginning, and then they phased that out. And as they phased out the chemical, and there is no on-site cleaning anymore. It's all done at Mulvey,
Yeah.
and they've stopped using those chemicals.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
No questions.
No questions?
I have anything. Thank you very much. You'll hear from us?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, I've got 10 minutes. If I'm going fast, I can probably get my car.
Okay.
But the photos-
You'd have to say it's adjourned.
Yeah, it's adjourned.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you, Roger.
Yeah.
Thanks.